And we're live.
Good evening, everyone. People are still joining, so I'll just wait a minute or so. My name's Yvonne Field, the founder and CEO of the Ubeli Initiative, and I'm delighted to be here this evening with you and going to have a really interesting conversation with Ameera Hossanali, who's going to cook with us and talk with us for the next hour. So if you just give us a moment or two just to see who else is going to join us, and then we'll start.
Sure, that sounds good to me.
Good, okay.
Cool.
Well, it looks like you've been busy.
I have been. I thought I'd get everything nice and prepped so that I can focus on talking to you while I just put everything together.
Okay, well, let's start then, actually. Let's start, Ameera. So, thank you again so much for joining us. And this session is one of several that we've been having called the Diaspora Kitchen, where we invite people from, from the diaspora, from the African and Asian, Latin American diaspora, and to ask you to cook us a meal and to talk to us about the food, but also to talk to you about yourself and, your journey here in the UK as a member of the diaspora community. And yeah, just to talk to us for the next hour. So, first of all, I'm going to just ask you, Ameera, to tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and your diaspora roots. Where are you from? Where's your family from? And yeah, how does that look in terms of your roots?
Sure, thanks, Yvonne. So yeah, I'm Ameera. I was born and raised in London, in specifically North London, Highbury. So born and raised as an Arsenal fan. And my family are originally from Mauritius. So my mum was actually born in London also, but my dad and all my grandparents from both maternal and paternal side emigrated to the UK from Mauritius. So I have one elder brother and one elder sister. And from a young age, we've been told, to make sure that we have our Mauritian roots kind of embedded deep within us, especially coming from such a small island. And there's so few Mauritians in London. Growing up, it's definitely been something that's baked into us as we've been raised.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Ameera. So, I'm going to ask you to start cooking because
Sure.
I know we've got only a little bit of time. However,
absolutely.
What I would suggest is just tell us what it is that you're going to cook for us this evening. What's the recipe?
Sure. So I'm making one main dish and two side dishes. So the main dish is Rugai, which is a traditional Mauritian tomato-based curry kind of sauce. And I'm cooking that with prawns. And my two side dishes are wilted pak choy, which is a simple kind of Chinese cabbage, and also another dish, which is potato and aubergine, kind of like a mixed cooked together. And I'll be serving that with a side of rice. So as we get going, I will just put some oil in the pan to get our rugai started.
Okay, well, Ameera, you're cooking
Sure.
at least 2 or 3 of my favorite foods. You're cooking prawns. I absolutely adore prawns. You're cooking aubergines, which some people call eggplant. I absolutely love that as well. And I think you're cooking rice as well. And, so yeah, I wish I was in the kitchen with you, as I was saying earlier.
I wish you were as well. It's as if someone had given me all the intel before when I was planning my dish, right?
Absolutely. So tell me about a little bit about the dish itself. What's the significance of it? Is it is it something you'd have on special occasions? Is it one of the national dishes, or is it just something your parents or grandparents cooked, sort of as you were growing up? What's the significance of this particular dish for you and your family? And
sure. Yeah. So the reason why I chose to cook and share rugai with you all is it is a national dish, and it is one that we cook, and I've kind of grown up cooking and eating from a very young age. I tend to eat rugai maybe once or twice a week because it's such a versatile dish. And the origins, I guess, comes from in Mauritius. There's probably like from my grandma's generation, surplus of fresh tomatoes. And so it makes it quite a versatile ingredient to use. And so, yeah, you kind of blitz together fresh tomatoes, and it comes together as like a kind of Creole curry sauce. So, and as I mentioned, it's versatile. You can, I've chosen to cook it with prawns today, but you can cook it with lamb, beef, chicken, other types of seafood, including salmon, hake, or even you can cook it with eggs. If you've got, eggs in the pantry and no fresh produce, then you can just add eggs into your rugai.
Okay, so just remind, particularly those people who've just joined us now, what have you got in the pan so far, Ameera?
Sure. So I've just got some onions in the pan, and I'm going to add a bit of crushed garlic and ginger. So this is to get the rugai prawns going. So it's always important to get your onions and garlic cooked in there to make it nice and fragrant. So that's all we've put in so far.
Okay, I mean, I noticed that you're not weighing anything at the moment. I mean, you might have weighed things earlier, but I mean, I was thinking about cooking today, and my mum, my family are from Jamaica. My mum, when she'd sort of give us recipes, and then you'd say, well, how much of this and how much of that? She'd say, oh, just judge it. And I didn't know what judging meant until I got older, that I could just judge and get it right, and just taste it a bit and just. So, I mean, did you weigh anything today, or are you able to judge the ingredients to get what you need to put in the pan and to get the right results?
Well, I'm exactly the same, kind of growing up and learning dishes from, especially my mum and my grandma. I used to always sit there with my notebook and say, well, how much of everything have you put in? And, at the start, you kind of will know, right, okay, 1 onion would go in for the main rugai dish, and how much you should weigh up. But as time goes on and you cook more often, it does just become a matter of judging it and playing it by ear. And just, sometimes it's about tasting and adjusting as you go along, but just making sure you've got the right amount of quantity just to get the base of your curry. So I've just added in some fresh ginger as well. Mm-hmm. So that's also gone into the pan. So yeah, and even with ginger, with those types of things, it kind of depends on your taste. If you're someone who isn't really a fan of ginger, then you can choose to kind of not include it, or maybe just include a tiny bit, just to bring out the freshness in the seafood or whatever dish whatever ingredient you're adding in. Or if you love ginger like I do, then you add in quite a big chunk. So kind of just depends on your preferences.
Great. And I mean, ginger's so good for you, so especially at this time of the year.
Absolutely, exactly.
I've got a question here, Ameera, asking whether there's a traditional base for to Mauritian curries. Is this what you're doing now, or are there other ingredients, if it's a traditional sort of base that you're base to the traditional Mauritian curry? What would...
Sure. So because of how Mauritius is and the kind of mix of cultures and dishes, it kind of depends on what you're making, because there are some dishes that are more related to like the Chinese kind of heritage, mm-hmm. But it has a Mauritian twist to it. So that will be more like a traditional stir fry, but then you just make it have a Mauritian touch to it. So generally speaking, there isn't like a set way to go about it. It's more of, you kind of always start most of your curries, Mauritian curries, with onions, ginger and garlic. Mm-hmm. So that tends to be the thing. So just to update you, I'm adding in some dried thyme and some paprika. Okay. So that's also just to start building out that flavor in the rugai.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually here with a lowly cup of tea, I'm sorry to say. So I'm going to sort of drink that alongside your cooking. I feel very sort of like, that's not really any substitute whatsoever, but that's what I'm going to have whilst I'm talking to you.
Oh, so, well, once the pandemic's over, then you're more than welcome to join me, and I can actually cook you a rugai in person.
Thank you. Well, I'll hold you to that. Don't worry. Yeah. So tell us a bit about yourself. You told us that you're from North London, that your family obviously are Mauritius, but tell us a little bit about yourself. What are you interested in doing when you're not cooking?
Sure, that's a good question. I think mainly just spending time with loved ones. You know, that takes up quite a lot of my time, family, friends. And also I'm quite passionate about kind of development work. So I spent 3 months in Malawi 8 years ago. Before I went to uni, I took a gap year and spent some time in Malawi. And since then, I've been trying to make sure that I keep a connection there. And, you know, what we've started to do since then is to support young girls to alleviate period poverty and to kind of assist them with their access to education, whether that's through, you know, school fees, or it's just kind of, you know, assessing their options when it comes to considering vocational courses and things like that. So that's something that does take up my time as well. Great.
Okay, thank you for that. So let's just go back to some questions around food and cooking. So
sure.
What are some of your first memories around food, whether, you know, food in your family, and also about cooking? You talked about your grandmother and your mother. So what are some of your early memories?
Some of my early memories would pretty much be what I'm doing right now. That fragrance of onions, garlic, ginger, you know, that kind of, that's always something that's kind of stuck with me. And, you know, kind of being versatile and being adaptable with the various dishes. And I guess that's because, you know, we come from Mauritius and there's such a wide range of cultures. So even if you're from one particular, you know, kind of part of that, you know, we're kind of more Indian Mauritian, but even then, you know, as a culture, generally speaking, you tend to pick and choose different parts of Mauritian culture, and that kind of feeds through into your dishes. So every day would be a different kind of dish and a different theme in our household. Yeah.
Okay. And what would be some of the celebratory events that you would, you know, that you would have at home that would also obviously involve food and gatherings, and, you know, kind of tell us a little bit about those things, your earliest memory of those kind of events?
Sure. So in terms of celebratory events, I'm Muslim, so Eid would always be a huge kind of gathering and event of family members and loved ones. And the traditional Mauritian dish to have on Eid is a biryani.
Yes.
So Mauritians tend to make biryani, and, you know, the main sort of way of doing that is with beef. That's kind of like the kind of most common way that biryanis are cooked in Mauritius. So yeah, so our Eids would be centered around, you know, having a kind of light breakfast, but saving your stomach for a big biryani dish with everyone, and then follow that up with dessert in the evening, and you know, having several plates of biryani in between. So that would be one of my, I would say, highlights. Until now, we always try and maintain that. Even if you try and, you know, change other traditions, you don't kind of change that.
Okay. And then, can I just stop you a minute, Ameera? Can you show us what you've got in your frying pan? What have you just put in there? I'm sure.
Yeah, no problem at all. So we have added in a tin tomato. So 1 tin, and also when I crushed that up, I added in a couple of fresh tomatoes. But you can go either way with that. You can just have you know, a tin of tomatoes added into your rugai, or if you've got a batch of fresh tomatoes, which is the traditional way, then you can just blitz that up and add that in there. But not blitz it too thin, because you want it to have some kind of texture and some life to it. So that's what's gone in the rugai so far, and we can actually leave that to cook away.
Okay, great.
Yes, because prawns, as you know, as a prawn lover, only needs a couple of minutes to cook.
Exactly.
So, you know, you just want to add it in last minute and just allow that to poach. If we were cooking it the lamb version, or a different, you know, if we were using a different base ingredient, then we'd have to start with that. We'd have to start with the chicken or the lamb, cook that off, and then add in the tomatoes.
Okay.
So this way around, yeah.
I've just had a request for you just to do a quick recap on what's gone into the pot so far.
Sure. So our rugai is cooking away here, and we added in some onions, fried that off for a couple of minutes, then added in ginger, garlic, both crushed, cooked that off a bit, and then added in some dried thyme and paprika. Allowed that to cook off, and then added in one tin tomato with a couple of fresh tomatoes blitzed as well. And we put the lid on and allowed that to just cook away for a bit. And now we could turn our attention to the second dish, which is another one of your favorites, the aubergine dish. So again, we've got the onions in here, starting to cook that off, and we can add in the garlic. We don't want the onions to go too brown. As soon as they go a bit translucent, then you can add in the next ingredient.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you another question then, whilst
go for it.
Sautés. So, your food and cooking interests seem to have come from the maternal side of your family. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes, generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, did your dad introduce you, or your brothers introduce you to any food that sort of from Mauritius that reflect your diaspora?
Yeah, so both sides of my family are quite in tune and have kind of kept Mauritian heritage and culture kind of in the day-to-day life. So that's definitely been a strong and prominent part of my identity, and just kind of how I've been raised, and been always told to be proud of being Mauritian. Sometimes it's quite difficult, especially growing up, to try and explain to people that okay, you come from a place which is a whole mixed bag of cultures and backgrounds. So that's definitely been through both sides of my family, which I definitely think has helped reinforce that as part of my identity.
Tell us a little bit about Mauritius. Have you been there? What's the country like? Just tell us a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So I used to go to Mauritius pretty much every year growing up. So I spent a lot of time during my childhood there. But the last time I went was about 8 years ago. So, I think this global pandemic has made me realize that I should make the most of the time and try and head back there whenever I can. Mauritius, genuinely, a lot of people do associate it with being a honeymoon destination, and to be somewhere just to go with kids and to just sit sit in a resort on a beach for the whole time that you're there. But there is so much more to it than that. Mauritius, in terms of the food, the culture, the people, the kind of natural scenery, and the kind of general life there, it's an absolutely beautiful place. So I definitely recommend it to everyone.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So how's the tomato base coming along with the garlic and the ginger and the onions? Is it bubbling?
Sure.
Is it?
Yeah, it is bubbling, and we're starting to see some of the oil come to the top, which is a good sign. You do want to open the lid a few times just to make sure it's not sticking at the bottom. So thanks for the prompt. But generally speaking, it's good to just continue to cook away, just because we want to kind of get rid of that fresh tomato kind of taste.
Sure.
And in the meantime, we've got the potatoes that have gone in.
Can we have a look, please?
Yeah, sure. So we've just got the potatoes in there with the onions and garlic. And potatoes go in first because it takes the longest to cook. So now that we've kind of given it a couple of minutes, I added in some salt earlier on as we were speaking. You can add some pepper just to season it, and we can add a bit of water and allow that to kind of cook away.
Okay, so sort of like bubbling up a little bit with the water.
Absolutely,
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we can do that.
Brilliant. Okay.
And you want to just add water to kind of the level surface of the potato, so it's kind of
covered
bubbling.
It,
as well as that.
Sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask you about cooking utensils.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, I noticed obviously you've got lots of pots there, bowls and other, sort of spoons. Tell me, what kind of cooking utensils do you like to use when you're cooking Mauritian food? Are there special utensils that you'd use? Although you may or may not have them in the UK, but also just generally speaking, when you're cooking, what kind of utensils do you like to use? I've just got, I like really nice knives and pots and things. So, and I've got my mother's spoons, some of her spoons from when she passed away 10 years ago.
That's really nice to hold on to
Yeah,
those types of things.
yeah.
So I tend to use wooden spoons for all my kind of curries and everything. It's one of those things that I've been raised by my mum and my grandma to say, rule number one, if you want your curries to have a nice flavor and to make sure when you're cooking everything and getting your spices kind of together and to bring out that flavor, it's just been something that I've always done, as opposed to a metal spoon, which I would use for kind of rice and other stuff. So for my curries, I would always use a wooden spoon. Generally speaking, in terms of other utensils, I always tend to kind of prep all my ingredients, because it just gives, frees up my headspace, so that when I cook, I can actually focus on cooking as opposed to kind of dotting around. So yeah, generally speaking, I like to have all my spices and everything laid out, because sometimes you tend to forget what you've got in the back of the cupboard if not. So
True, that's true.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm quite a versatile person in that sense of, different pots and pans. Today I've cooked I'm cooking my rugai in a wok as opposed to a normal pan. So just it kind of depends on what you're doing. So
okay, great.
There's not a set rule with those kind of things.
Okay, well, Kim, who said hi to me, hi Kim, is asking about your favorite TV chef. Do you have one? And if so, why do you like them? And it doesn't have to be TV, it could be somebody who's sort of written books or, but not necessarily been. But who's your favorite chef?
Sure, that's a really good question. I really like Raymond Blanc.
Mm-hmm. Why do you like him?
I just like his style, and he's a lot of chefs talk about fresh produce and to know where you kind of source your ingredients from. But yeah, just like a lot of the shows that I've seen, and kind of taking you behind the scenes in terms of where he sources his produce from, especially fresh vegetables. And obviously he's French, so he's an expert in like patisserie and French desserts and things like that. I find him really interesting to kind of watch. Not really that I'm going to ever replicate any of his dishes, but I think the personality as well. I always like watching him.
That's great. Again, do you want to just show everyone, our participants who are here, to just the pan, the wok with the tomatoes in it?
Sure, yeah, no problem at all. So we've had the rugai cooking away for maybe 5 minutes or so, and we can see that it's already starting to come together. So we've got the tinned tomato, fresh tomatoes, onions, garlic, and ginger, along with a few of the spices in there, and it's cooking away nicely.
Okay, that's great. Actually, it sounds like to Kim, her comments, like she said that she loves him in terms of the chef you just mentioned, and she said the French know what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think aside from kind of professional chefs, there are so many you get cooking inspiration from so many different people, from elders in your family, from your friends' families. It's kind of always good to continue to expand your horizons when it comes to cooking. And sometimes you can Google a dish and try and look for a recipe so many times online, but sometimes it's just good to reach out to your network and find out. I've got a friend of mine who I was looking for a Persian rice recipe, and I was going through so many websites and they were all so different. So then I ended up just pinging my friend and saying, can your mum give me a recipe?
Absolutely.
And she shared one with me, and it came out absolutely beautiful. And
nice.
It's just sometimes getting that experience and getting the inspiration from people that is sometimes the best way.
Absolutely. I mean, there's just so much food knowledge within our communities that often goes unrecognized. Again, in terms of trying to get my mum to write down her recipes for things like Jamaican curry, curry goat and rice, and, you know, ackee and saltfish, I gave her one of those books that you were writing, you know, you can write things out, but she never did. As I said, she'd always just, I'd try things out and then she'd give me hints and tips over the phone. Sometimes she'd forget some of the ingredients and then she'd ring back and say, oh, I forgot to tell you to put this in or that in. So I kind of took a few goes to get it right, but it, you know, but now I've got the recipes ensconced in my mind, so I know how, and I do my own version as well, so you know, it's really great. So
exactly, and I think it's one of those things, right, where, you know, as you mentioned before, we don't realize until we're, you know, we've become more experienced and well seasoned with dishes. You know, when someone asks us for a recipe, we probably can't give an exact you know, step-by-step guide in terms of what goes into it, because, you know, we also just add whatever as we go along.
Exactly. Absolutely. So, I mean, there's a few people who've just joined us recently. Ameera, do you want to just say a little bit again about what you're cooking and why you're cooking it in terms of the dish?
Sure. So I'm cooking a Mauritian Rugai with prawns, which is a tomato-based curry sauce, and with two side dishes, a potato and aubergine mix, and also a pak choy, a wilted pak choy dish, and that will be served with rice, just a plain Jane steamed plain rice. So we've got the potatoes and the rugai cooking away. So we can actually get started with the pak choy, just so you know that it's not really a time precious thing. It kind of takes a couple of minutes to cook, but it doesn't really get ruined if it's kind of sat there. So we can get going with that.
And what about the rice? When are you going to, what's your plans in terms of when you'll put that on?
Rice will take around 10-15 minutes to cook. So yeah, we've still got a little bit of time for that. Brilliant. So yeah, we can get that cooking away at some point.
Okay, so let me ask you another question then, Ameera.
Sure.
So if you're having a dinner party, yes,
yeah,
could you name 3 people that you'd love to invite? They can be alive or they could be dead, but who would you invite to your table if you had a choice? Which 3 people, and why would you invite them?
Which 3 people? Oh gosh, you're hitting me up with very difficult questions. 3 people who I would invite to a dinner party. I would say probably Muhammad Ali. Okay. I think because he's such an inspirational person. I think he's got so many stories and life experience that I think he would be a great person to kind of sit through a 3-course meal with. And also he's got quite a good one-liners. You know, when you see the clips nowadays of, you know, different things that he said through various interviews, I think he'd be quite an entertaining person to have around the table. The second person I would probably have at a dinner party would be I would actually say, you know, this is quite different to the first person, but also a sports type person, is Arsene Wenger, who was a previous Arsenal manager. You know, I grew up as a hardcore Arsenal fan, and you know, I think he aside from the game itself, I think he's got a lot of pearls of wisdom to kind of share. You know, he's quite well versed in like Japanese philosophy and kind of brought that into football and things like that. So I think he would be quite a good person to have as well. And then the third person, I would say probably maybe someone like maybe Maya Angelou.
I was thinking about her actually just now. That's really
weird.
Were
you?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
Why would you invite her? Why would you invite Maya Angelou to your dinner party?
You know what? I think with her, it's, you know, I don't even think there's any words that I could put together to explain. I think she's just such an incredible person, and I probably would be in awe the whole time, but I think she'd be someone incredible just to have around the table. And again, I think she's just got so much wisdom
Yeah,
that I think should be a great person to have around the table. And also, sorry, just to pause you there. So the Rugai's cooking, bubbling away nicely. So we're going to add in a chili. So in Mauritian,
quite a large chili, wasn't it? It was quite a large one.
It is. So in Mauritian cuisine, we tend to use green finger chilies.
Right. Okay.
So even, traditionally in Mauritius and even here, we add finger chilies as opposed to other types of chilies.
Where would you buy that from in North London? I mean, what kinds of shops would have the green finger chilies?
Yeah, any kind of supermarket actually. So even, you can go to kind of, your mainstream supermarkets, Morrison's, Tesco's, and just grab a bag of fresh finger chilies, or your kind of ethnic supermarkets. They also sell fresh finger chilies. It kind of depends on where you're shopping. It's kind of an easy and accessible ingredient to get. In Mauritian cuisine, we like to use finger chilies. It depends on how spicy you like your food. You can kind of cut it open so that the seeds can actually immerse in your dish, or you can just add it in whole. And that's more to give it a bit of heat and a bit of a kick.
Yes.
But mainly for the flavor. With green chilies, they're very, flavorful. So it's more about that rather than it being very spicy.
Sure. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And you put one of those in?
Yes, I've added one into my rugai.
Okay, fine. And in terms of sort of changing consistencies, because when I make sort of curry type dishes or curries, it can go from being very watery then to kind of becoming thick and sort of, it kind of reduces, in terms of the consistency, it becomes thicker, and that's when I know it's getting ready as opposed to lots of water in it. What is that very similar with the rugai?
Yeah, so with the rugai, it will kind of, one thing actually would mostly be in terms of the smell. So with the fragrance, you can tell that the rugai is almost ready when you can no longer smell the fresh tomato.
Okay.
Yeah, because you can tell that the tomato's cooked off and it's kind of transformed into a curry, as opposed to just being a tomato base.
Yes, I understand.
Does that make sense?
Great.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, with Italian dishes where you've got tomatoes used, you still want that kind of freshness in there with a lot of the Italian dishes. Whereas here you don't want to do that because you want to cook off the tomatoes. So one thing is mainly through the smell. And also you'll get, you'll see the tomato and liquid kind of reduce a bit, and also the oil kind of float into the top a bit. So then it gives you that indication that it's almost there, which it is.
Okay, that's great. And Nayo's asking if the chili is going in whole, or did you cut it up beforehand? Ameera put it in whole, yes. But she said you could slice it and have some of the seeds come into the sauce, so the curry sauce, so that you can get more heat to the curry. And so, Ameera, what's that in the back, in the frying pan that you just put into the frying pan that you're now cooking?
Sure. So in the frying pan, we've got the onions for our pak choy dish. So again, as I mentioned earlier on, it is a very simple wilted pak choy. So we are cooking off the onions, again, just for a couple of seconds, and then what we want to do is add in the stalk of the pak choy. So where I've cut the pak choy, I've separated the green part from the kind of stalk bit. So we want to go in with the stalk because that will take a few more minutes to cook, and then we can add in the leaf kind of last minute, which will just wilt in the pan for a couple of minutes.
Absolutely.
So we can go straight in with that.
Okay, that's good to hear, actually, because I was wondering with the pak choy if you were, because I know that it can wilt very quickly, but the fact that you're actually doing, the stalk, and the harder pieces that take a little bit longer to cook than the leaves, that's really good.
Yeah, and with rugai, it's quite a versatile dish in terms of what you can pair with it. So you can any kind of veg, or any type of greens can kind of go with it. Traditionally, we tend to have one or the other, not normally a green veg and a vegetable dish. You can normally do one or the other, but I thought I'd share both with you all today, so you can see a few different options. But in terms of greens, you can also just wilt some spinach,
Yes.
or any type of kind of collard greens or anything. You can have that with rugai. And as a veg dish, you can pretty much play with anything. You can have cauliflower, broccoli, anything you've got in your fridge can kind of pair nicely with a rugai, because it's just a tomato base. So
yes,
anything kind of goes nicely with it.
Okay, so how's your potatoes doing?
Potatoes, I'm just having a look, are starting to cook away very nicely.
Can we have a quick look? I know it's a little bit difficult to pick up what's bring onto the camera, but it's nice.
Yeah.
Okay,
so not
that's
sure
great.
If you can see.
Yeah, we can see. Yeah, absolutely.
So the potatoes have softened,
yes.
Which is good. That's what we want it to be. We don't want it to have cooked too much. So we can now actually add in a couple of fresh tomatoes. So this is 2 tomatoes chopped.
Right.
And we can add that into the potato dish.
Did you keep the skins on the tomatoes? Just chop the
yes,
skins? Yes.
Yeah. So unlike the rugai, which is a sauce and curry,
yes.
with this, the tomato is just in there to give it a bit of body and a bit of flavor. So, we want it to still have that kind of consistency and texture.
Yes.
So it's gone in whole with the skin on. And now we can add in the aubergine into the potato pot as well.
And so in terms of seasoning so far, you've actually just added a bit of salt. You haven't added anything else to this at the moment.
Yeah, so just some salt and pepper. And we can let that cook away and then adjust the seasoning as we see fit last minute. But in terms of other types of seasoning and spices, that's not really required for the potato dish.
No, sure. Okay.
Yeah. So we can actually just cover the potato dish and let that all kind of come together. With the pak choy stalks, that's still cooking away. They're still a bit hard, so I'll leave that for a couple of minutes.
Could we possibly have a look in this frying pan? Is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So
okay.
So
just remind us what's in there. It's onions, yes, with the pak choy.
Just onions and with the pak choy stalks. So, we want to cook that to the point of, give it a couple of minutes where the stalks start to soften a little bit. And then we can add in the pak choy leaves. And we left that out because it only takes a couple of minutes just to wilt.
Got a question. How many aubergines did you put in the pot? Good question, Naya.
Sure. So tend to put well, here we go back to the question of how rough amount. So
yes.
So I put in kind of one and a half potatoes, and then put about 3/4 of an aubergine. So it kind of just depends, in terms of quantity, but you want them to be like for like, the potato and the aubergine. So it depends on what you're using.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wondered, Ameera, I mean, in terms of shopping for food, particularly fresh produce, but just food generally, has it changed under lockdown? Do you do things now in terms of food shopping and even cooking that you didn't do prior to lockdown?
Sure, that's a really good question. So since lockdown, I have tried to adjust my diet a bit more. So I tend to stick to kind of pescatarian or vegetarian dishes from Monday to like Thursday or Friday, and then stick to kind of a normal varied diet that I normally would follow on the weekends. So that's actually given me a chance to be more experimental with my vegetarian dishes and pescatarian dishes. Cooking a lot more now with jackfruit and other types of meat alternatives that I normally wouldn't have done before. So lockdown has definitely given me a chance to kind of brush up on my pescatarian and vegetarian dishes.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you know, because cooking and particularly baking has become a real big, you know, thing that a lot of people who weren't previously baking and cooking have got into.
Absolutely.
My daughter, she, you know, she got really into cooking while she was here with me, and you know, I was quite surprised. She was doing all sorts of things, and also shopping, just going shopping for food and everything. It kind of, yeah,
well, that's
it kind
the
of
thing,
increased her
because
confidence.
and supermarkets are the only kind of trip that we've got nowadays, right? So
exactly. No.
So everyone tries to make the most of that and use that as a way to kind of be experimental. And I can't tell you how many banana breads I've made in the past year as well.
So banana bread fiend and expert, huh?
Exactly. So I've also stuck the rice on now
Okay.
to allow that to just cook away. And the pak choy stalks have softened, so we can go in with the leaves and literally give that a couple of minutes. But actually, because the pan is so hot, I think we can actually just turn that off and just leave that to cook away.
So you're turning the pak choy off, yes? So because it will just continue cooking, obviously, because there's heat underneath it. And
correct, yeah. So just leaving that with the residual heat from the pan.
Yes.
So that can just wilt away nicely in its own time.
That's great. Okay, so
I'll show you that in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see that in a moment.
Yeah, sure, I will do once that has that's come together. The potato dish again is still softening and cooking away with the aubergine and the tomatoes that we've added in.
Can I have a look? Can we have a look in the pan? Whenever I wanted to look in the pan when my mother was cooking, she'd always just tell me to get out the kitchen, and you know, you couldn't get in under her feet. You need to come down just a little bit. Just yes. Okay. Oh, it looks great. Thank you. Nice.
Yeah, so it's slowly coming together. With the potato dish, it is a matter of just letting it cook, you know, and allowing all those different flavors to come together. The aubergine is starting to soften, which is a good sign. You know, we want to keep an eye on that because we don't want the aubergine to become too mushy.
No, okay.
And the rice is starting to cook away as well. And, you know, to check in on our rugai, that's coming
How's
together.
That doing? Can we have a look at the rugai?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's changing consistency.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh, that looks amazing.
Yeah, and the color as well has changed. It's gone a bit deeper.
Absolutely, yes.
So in that sense, it's looking quite good. It's reduced.
Yes.
It's reduced to about, you know, kind of 3/4. So not too much. But if your rugai does reduce more than that, then you can just add in some water and just allow that to kind of bubble and cook away.
Yes, no, that's great.
So at this point, we can add in our prawns.
Okay, can we have a look at what the prawns?
Sure. So I've just got some king prawns here.
Yes.
So again, as I mentioned, you can cook rugai with pretty much anything, and different types of prawns and seafood works absolutely fine. So I'm just seasoning the prawns because you know, we are adding it into the rugai, which is already kind of got so much flavor, but we want to make sure that the prawns itself, when you eat it, has got that, you know, the nice flavor to it. So we just,
what did you just add? Salt and pepper? Just salt and black pepper?
Just salt and pepper, yeah. Just to make sure that the prawns have some flavor to it.
Yeah, for sure.
And that is going straight into the rugai.
Great. I found an amazing local fish shop on West Green Road near where I live in Tottenham.
Sure.
And, I mean, the food, the fish is just great. And it's also nice to shop locally, you know, and to sort of, because these shops are struggling at the moment in time. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Especially given, you know, the current circumstances, I think it's really important for us to support our local shops and businesses.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when you're not cooking, Rugai, what is your favorite? When are you in food heaven, as they say on some of the food programs, and when are you in food hell? So tell me about food heaven first. What do you absolutely love cooking and eating, or just eating even? Cooking.
That's a really good question. My food heaven would be Turkish cuisine. In North London, we've got so many great Turkish restaurants.
Yeah.
And it's not just the normal grills, but the kind of other dishes like pide, which is the Turkish kind of pizza.
Yeah.
You've got manti, which is like Turkish dumplings. There's so many different wide range of dishes, and even if you have an array of mezes, that alone can be like a dish in itself. So Turkish cuisine, I think, hands down, would be my ultimate favorite cuisine. Food hell, well, not really a dish, but just generally speaking, and you might not like me for it, but I really don't like watermelon.
Okay. What is it about
Yeah.
watermelon that you don't like? Is it a texture? Is it just the way it looks? What is?
Yeah, the texture, and it's a bit of a nothing fruit for me.
Water. It's all water.
Yeah, exactly. So I can I'm a huge fan of papaya and dragon fruit and all sorts of different kind of more fruit kind of associated with summer, but yeah, just not watermelon. I'm kind of fine with everything else. I don't really have a food hell, but yeah, a watermelon,
Yeah.
especially when you've got a family barbecue and everyone's passing around the watermelon. I just try and dodge it and stay away from it.
I've got some comments here about school dinners being food hell, and but actually somebody, Aisha, said she loves sprinkle cakes at school. So that was part of her food heaven. Okay, that's great. Okay, and I've got a question here. You spoke earlier, Ameera, about an initiative in Malawi supporting young girls and young women. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it, or a little bit about it? Because some people came a bit late. Tell us, how did you get involved in that, and what is it? What do you actually do? Who are you supporting, and how are you doing that?
Sure. So I went to Malawi 8 years ago during my gap year, and I spent 3 months there. And I went with an organisation, and I really just fell in love with the place and the people, and thought that I don't want it to be something that kind of just gets left as a memory of the past, and something where it's such an amazing place, and there is a lot of need and a lot of help that needs. There's so many different areas that could really have some support with. So an area that's been really interesting for me, and I've always been passionate about, is kind of girlhood related issues, particularly in the area of period poverty. The idea that even in the UK, that up until now, we've got the problem here, and sanitary products are taxed as if it's a luxury good and everything. It's such a huge issue, and in Malawi that kind of just translates even worse, to the point where some of the girls that we were speaking to through a friend of mine who lives there, some of the girls would say, when we have our periods, we just don't go to school.
Sure.
It's as simple as that. So when you actually think about that, that's 12 weeks of the year. That's 3 months where they are just missing out on their education, simply because of having a period, or just not having the right products, or the facilities at the school or anything. So it just kind of is a major blocker for them in terms of their development. So since then, we've in the past kind of year and a half, we've been trying to work with a group of girls at a local school, and alongside providing them with period pads, which immediately made a huge difference. We've been trying to kind of mentor them and help them and support them make decisions about further education and vocational courses, and that's something, unfortunately, has kind of been paused due to the pandemic, whereby a lot of the girls ended up being at home and falling pregnant because of the situation. We're talking about 14, 15-year-old girls. And we're hoping that in the next few months we can re-engage with the girls and just try and support them a bit more and improve access to education.
Great. Okay, that's great. Well,
Yeah,
put a, maybe you could write something for one of our bulletins or newsletter and ask for further support, with the initiative, because I'm sure there'll be lots of people and organisations within our network that be interested to hear about the work, and I would be interested in supporting it. So, sounds
yeah,
great.
that would be amazing. We're more than happy to. So yeah, so that's that kind of is in a nutshell about the kind of work that we do in Malawi, and we're hoping to scale that out. But I think it's sometimes you have to be very particular about the area of focus, because you can't do everything. So for us, it's about kind of focusing on access to education and alleviating period poverty. And even if you can do that for 10 girls, just imagine the knock-on effect and how that can help future generations. It makes a huge difference. So that's what we're hoping to do.
Great. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about, do you experiment at all? Do you make up your own recipes, or do you, sort of, are you quite a sort of, experimental cooker? Do you try? I've got a thing, which is that whenever I'm having people around, I usually cook something I've never cooked before, which is really sort of high risk.
Very
I don't know why I
risky.
do it,
Yeah.
but actually, I'll be honest, about 8 times out of 10, it comes out really well. There's been 1 or 2 disasters, but I find it as an opportunity to kind of stretch myself, and to try something that, that I've not tried before, and to go out and buy ingredients that I've maybe not bought before, So how are you with experimenting with cooking?
So I think I do enjoy doing that, but I don't try and push the boat out too far, mainly because I'll forget what I've put in. And then when you want to make the dish again, or when people ask you what you've put in the dish, you can't remember. And that tends to happen a lot, especially with my mom and my grandma. They don't just stick to Mauritian cooking. They make all sorts of dishes, and sometimes they make amazing dishes. To your point, even when we've got people round, and then when you ask them, okay, can you share us the recipe? What have you done differently this time? And they say, oh, well, I just put in a bit of this and a bit of that. I can't remember. I'm gonna have to make it again and just wing it and see how it goes.
Sure. No, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
So this question's a little bit sort of, I suppose, more reflective in terms of, so how have your experiences been as a person of diaspora, of the diaspora living in the UK? How's that influenced the way that you live your life? I mean, you spoke a little bit about that, because you said that you had a very Mauritian upbringing. Your parents were sort of, what did that mean? I mean, how does that sort of, how's that impacted on you and how you live your life now, maybe? We talked about Eid and celebrations, but any other sort of insights?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question, because as much as I touched upon the part of being Mauritian and having that as a strong identity, it naturally was a bit challenging trying to kind of complement that and find a middle ground between that and my British identity and being British, and trying to find my own way within that. I'm Muslim. I'm from Mauritius, which is an African country, an African island. Yet my ancestors are from India. So with a big, with a mixed bag of kind of cultural identities within that alone, did make it challenging at times. And I think my, reflecting on it, I kind of got to a point when maybe I was about 16, 17, where I thought, I'm too tired trying to fit into different boxes and different the different areas. I grew up with a lot of with a mixed bag of friends from various groups, but when people would ask me to identify and try and explain to them how I identify, I would really struggle with it. And then I got to a point when I was about 17 where I thought, well, I don't fit into any of them, and I'm going to actually take pride and joy in that, and I think that was very liberating for me, being able to kind of be true and open to myself. So I think that's definitely helped. And has allowed me to kind of educate people about, coming from places where you don't fit into particular boxes.
What are you putting in the Rugai now, Ameera? What ingredients are you
Sure. So within that time, the Rugai, we added the prawns and we let that kind of poach the prawns for a couple of minutes. So, and we switch that off. So the Rugai is good to go. So just adding in some garnish. So we're adding in some spring onions and some coriander.
Oh, nice.
And again, in the potato dish, also adding in coriander. For me, I think you can have the most gorgeous and flavorful dish. If you don't have the right garnish with it, then sometimes the dish just won't shine.
Yeah, so it goes a bit flat. It can be a bit flat. That looks amazing. I absolutely love
Exactly.
fresh coriander.
Absolutely.
Hey, so are we nearly there then? Are we nearly there?
Yes, we are nearly there. So while we were speaking, I put the rice on and that is cooked away nicely. Again, as I mentioned before, it's just normal plain steamed rice, nothing kind of different.
It's not basmati, it's not jasmine, it's ordinary long grain rice, is it?
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
And with Rugai, you can cook it with and serve it with pretty much anything. Sometimes I have it with quinoa. Yes. You can have it with bread, pita bread. Kind of depends really what you fancy. So are we ready to
serve up? Yes, please do.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Your timing's perfect in terms of how you've cooked it, because we've just got a few more minutes to go before we end session. This is just absolutely perfect. And wow.
Well, it's not perfect because you're not here to enjoy the dish with me.
I'm salivating, really, honestly. So
it's a real shame, but after we come out of this this global pandemic, then you're more than welcome to join me and I can cook you up the Rugai dish.
Amazing.
Just take out some. And it's quite a simple dish to make, considering we made 2 side dishes alongside the Rugai in the space of an hour. So it's just all about kind of preparing your ingredients and just making sure you've got everything at hand, and then the actual cooking process itself doesn't really take too long. Right. And so we are done.
Oh wow, do you want to come into the center? Come a bit to your left, I think. Yeah, absolutely. Sure. That's amazing. Oh my goodness me.
So we've got Rugai prawns, garnished with coriander and chopped spring onions, potato and aubergine.
Oh, nice.
And pak choy with cooked with onions, and served with some plain rice.
That looks absolutely amazing, Ameera. Thank you so much for cooking and talking to us. And I mean, Kim's saying it's a wonderful cooking experience. Someone says they can't, who's that? Wumi says she can't believe that you've done this in an hour. Looks fab. There's Nayo's commented. I mean, there's just great comments coming through. So this is just absolutely amazing. I feel
thank you so much for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.
No, well, I feel really honoured to have been on this cooking journey with you. And I'm coming around for that dish. So we'll talk in a few months' time when lockdown's over. So I really hope that you enjoy your meal. And we'll put this on YouTube. It'll be out there. So hopefully you'll get some other people commenting on the experience.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Inspired. And I will be thinking. I'll be thinking of you as I tuck in. No,
absolutely. Well, do tuck in, and we've just got lots and lots of comments coming through, just saying thanks. It looks yummy, and amazing. People are inspired. So enjoy your meal. Thank you, Said, for cooking with us and talking to us about your life and your diaspora connections. It's been a real pleasure, Ameera. Just enjoy the evening. Thank you so much.
Perfect, and thank you everyone for joining us. And for your questions and your points. If you have anything else, you can drop it into the comments field of YouTube, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay, and for those who have joined us this evening, please follow us on our social media at Atubele Initiative. There are other diaspora cooking sessions. Aisha and Tracy, thank you so much for organising this. It's been a really lovely experience, and thank you for asking me to speak with Ameera and be on this journey with her. Everyone, please have a great evening. Whatever you're cooking, cook well, eat well, and come and join us in a few weeks' time for the next session. Good night.
Perfect.